and girls, what is going on? It's your boy Peter here, aka Peter Freako 10, baby. Bring you guys episode of the Movie Review Show, where the good movies are always reviewed. Okay, back into our movie review. What up, bitches, hoes, men, women, children? Guess what time it is? It is time for ScreamFeast! Yep, that's right. October's upon us, boys and girls. Halloween's top priority, which means candy, bobbing for apples, pumpkins, jack-o'-lanterns, farm visits, everything you can think of, you name it. Halloween is top motherfucking priority, just like cocaine is top priority in getting you where you are in a gang. It's that time, boys and girls. And of course, that means it's top priority for horror movies for me. Just like Christmas, we sit around the couch, watch as many as we can. And I have a few other coming that I do want to talk about. I had a few that I did see this summer, and I have written up the reviews of, and I am filming them right now. But I filmed these ahead of time, right before ScreamFest. So when you guys see those reviews, you're going to be wondering, is this supposed to be a part of ScreamFest? Well, they are now, because they are kind of horror movies that I do want to review. So you'll see reviews of those coming. But for right now, we're kicking off a new series today. I've already started Friday the 13th. I made it through a good chunk of I made it through the Paramount era, and I finished Jason Goes to Hell. Let's hope they could get another one going at some point. I will give that movie its own video, as I do feel a bit bad about rushing through it, but I do want to improve that review. But talk about Friday the 13th. We started Nightmare on Elm Street. We started Hellraiser. There is one other trilogy I haven't started, and this is in prep before Bride of Chucky, which I do plan to see, and I'm pretty much giving away the film that this series is a part of, since if you guys know the title. But getting prepared to see Bride of Chucky, I figured now was the perfect time to look back into this series, because some people who do know about Bride of Chucky do not know that this is actually part of a series. If you don't know that, you're not a horror fan. But we're going to go back to the beginning with this series, because we're kicking off a film that I think is a very important figure in getting me into horror. This is a film that practically everybody in the horror community knows about, everybody has seen, and to some people it actually made them horror fans, such as myself. And it's a film that takes a concept as ridiculous as it is and makes it work. And without this movie, the character in this would not be the figure that he is today. And what film is that, you may be asking? Well, boys and girls, that film is none other than Child's Play. You wish it was only make-believe. Yeah, kicking off ScreamFest with a bang. Talking about this classic. So, how is Child's Play? Well, grab your knives, grab your cute but creepy looking dolls, and let's sit around the computer and let us talk about Child's Play. Now, Child's Play, this is a film made in 1988, and this is directed by Tom Holland, who also had a hand in the script. Now, as a director, Tom Holland, this is a guy who's a big name in the horror genre. Before directing, he wrote The Beast Within, Class of 1984. He also wrote Psycho 2. Then he started transitioning into directing, where he directed the cult classic Fright Night. And while not being horror, he directed Fatal Beauty, which was a Whoopi Goldberg film in the vein of Beverly Hills Cop, which I actually like. I think that's underrated and didn't deserve the hate it got. But there is a blessing to come from that movie for those who hate that film and like this, which I'll get into. But he's not the one that this whole movie spawns from. Who's that, you may be asking? Well, that's where the journey to get this film made begins. Our story begins with a man named Don Mancini. Before being the man we know him today, back in 1985, he was just a student studying literature in the UCLA. He grew up with a very troubled relationship to his father, who worked as an ad executive for toys and saw the effects of consumerism and marketing effects on the world, especially kids in general. He started writing a script based around that influence that was having on people, while also using the Cabbage Patch Kids riots of 1983 as also inspiration. Drawing from his personal life and various forms of media like the character of Freddy Krueger, Poltergeist, Magic, an episode of The Twilight Zone aptly named Living Doll, he got to work writing a script that would be very different from what we ended up with this movie. With the original title being called Batteries Not Included, which was changed because of a film of the same name coming out at the same time, where the original idea would be about a boy called Andy who finds a doll called Buddy, who was filled with fake blood and would end up coming to life when Andy mixed his blood with the doll's. And basically, the doll, who liked Andy so much, and represented Andy's anger towards specific things like his parents' divorce and his mother's absence, with a larger emphasis on a whodunit. Basically, the movie was actually questioning whether Andy was being truthful that the doll was killing people or Andy himself was the killer. He shopped the project around, with Charles Band originally expressing interest in producing it under his recently opened Full Moon Pictures label, as he worked with Don previously, writing for a film he did with John Carl Buechler called Cellar Dweller. However, this script caught the attention of David Kirshner, who had just come off producing the hit animated film An American Tail, saw the film's script and got MGM on his side and into a bidding war, which they won, allowing them to be the ones who distribute the film. Once they were on board, David did have some requests that he wanted to do to the script, as he wanted rewrites to be done, due to the fact that while he liked the script, he questioned why anybody would buy a doll with blood in it. As this was going on, MGM was searching high and low for a director. They wanted someone who was high profile and already had experience. Names that were included but were not limited to included William Friedkin of The Exorcist fame, Irvin Kershner, who did RoboCop 2, Robert Wise, Howard Franklin, hell, even husband and wife duo Rocky Moore and Annabelle Jekyll were even considered. Yes, the Super Mario Brothers movies directors were even considered, but they dropped out due to Annabelle's pregnancy. But they finally landed on Tom Holland. He just come off a success of Fright Night and was recommended to them by Steven Spielberg of all people due to his work on his show Amazing Stories. Right when he entered, Don was making things harder to move forward, as because they ordered rewrites, he didn't know what to do differently with the new story. Holland himself interjected himself into rewriting the script around this time, bringing in the idea of making Chucky's origins being that of a serial killer who transferred his soul into the body of a doll. They also changed the name of the character from Buddy to Chucky to avoid a lawsuit, as the My Buddy doll was existing around this point. But due to the popularity of this film, didn't survive. He also took influence from serial killers such as James Earl Ray, Charles Manson, Lee Harvey Oswald, and even the Hillside Stranglers when coming up with the character of Charles Lee Ray. They then ran into another problem though, as Tom found himself having an even harder time of coming up with a plot point of how Charles possesses the doll, and because he was just hired to direct Fatal Beauty, Tom at the time had to drop out, which led to MGM almost canceling the movie as they had no writer left to finish the movie. It was then the team came across John Lafia, who tried championing himself along with writing to direct the movie, but was declined due to his inexperience. That being said, a couple years later, he would get his chance to direct with Child's Play 2. He would give his own draft of the movie, which would actually have some ideas that would be used in future sequels. As this was going on, Tom managed to finish up Fatal Beauty in time and managed to get rehired, and he got back into writing the script, changing various things, and even chose the idea of voodoo being the reason Charles transferred his soul into the doll and was using it to kill people. There were aspects of the script Don didn't like, in particular the voodoo portion, which also included David Kirshner, therefore causing a lot of ire among the three, especially when Tom tried to claim sole credit, claiming that what the script came to was completely different enough for him to consider it its own, and that he could claim credit about it, which caused this whole feud between them. To this day, it's never been confirmed who actually did what with the script and what ideas came from whom. After that long road, though, they finally greenlit the film, and it finally went into production with a budget of $9 to $13 million. The movie was shot on location in Chicago. MGM tried to get the film to shoot in California to get costs cut, but after a scouting trip, the team were displeased with what they saw and commanded that it stay in the area. This proved hard for the crew, as because they were shooting in the winter, it was always cold, sometimes dipping into the negative zone, which led to the crew having to rent hotel rooms to warm up the crew. There was even a point when filming at night, the camera equipment ended up freezing. When bringing Chucky to life, the team originally put Chris Wallace at work on the effects due to his work on Gremlins. When Chris dropped out of production, the team went to Rick Baker, which he turned down. He did recommend Kevin Yeager, though, who jumped at the opportunity. With his expertise, Chucky was brought to life through puppetry, which took 9 puppeteers to operate. Animatronics were also used, which Kevin created multiple versions of, which represented Chucky's various faces and stages, and even had a little person playing Chucky, in this case Ed Gale, who also played Howard and Howard the Duck. This also contributed to more tension between Holland, Mancini, and Kirshner as they were debating how much time Chucky should be seen on screen. Kirshner, knowing he would be the face of the movie, whereas Tom wanted a better build-up to his final reveal. Despite all the tension, shooting lasted till March of that year, and all the scenes together counted for a runtime of 2 hours. I kid you not, a 2-hour horror film of this length. Wow. However, they didn't like it because when presented this to the audience, the test screening came out negative. This was due to the amount of time Chucky was on screen, as the audience agreed with Tom on that side, as they thought it would work better as a Jaws effect. Tom had already left the production, as he already went on to do other things, and John and Don were invited into the editing room and cut its original 2-hour time into 87 minutes. To market the film, MGM began hiding the Chucky doll as the face of the movie, as a lot of ads besides Fangoria made no mention of Chucky. Even the original poster was like someone has moved in with the Barkley family. What it was, they would never know. They would have to go see the movie. And pretty much what happened was they decided to release it on Veterans Day and avoid the original Halloween release that they thought they were going to get, to avoid competition with Halloween 4. Because let's not forget, 1988 was a stacked year for horror films, as you had this, Halloween 4, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Friday the 13th Part 7, the list goes on. So it's amazing that this was able to find its footing. But the movie was released on November 11th, 1988, the same day as films like Ernest Saves Christmas and Iron Eagle 2. And it outdid them all, grossing over $6 million in its opening weekend and opening to number 1 at the box office, and it finished its run with over $44 million. It was also MGM and United Artists' second highest grossing film of the year, behind Rain Man. This was the most surprising part of all this, because at the time critics were ripping on horror films. They actually gave it a positive review. On Rotten Tomatoes, it is a 74%. Critics praised the film for the character of Chucky, the story, the puppet work, the effects, and even the death scenes. Hell, Roger Ebert even liked the film. I shit you not. Roger Ebert awarded it 3 out of 4 stars. Those who criticized it, they didn't buy the idea. But nevertheless, the film was a hit and won itself various awards and was nominated for some, but helped bring Chucky, a new horror icon, into this world. And its success led to a sequel in 1990 and a third film, which I have in the other room there, as I am going to watch it later, and a fourth one, which I do plan to see. And the audience seemed to enjoy it too, as on IMDb, it is a 6.7 out of 10. However, with every success, there comes the blame game. As a few years after the film was released, there was an incident where a 16-year-old named Suzanne Caper was kidnapped, and she was tortured for hours. All the while, they played, "Hi, I'm Chucky, wanna play?" And they blamed it on the movie just because the character is named Chucky and all that. Which, it's a horrible tragedy, but I think to blame the movie is a load of bullshit. You see these from these dumbasses all the time who want to say sex comedies teach men to treat women like objects. Turok teaches kids how to use a bow and arrow and go on a spree. It's all bullshit. Like Scream said, movies don't make psychos. Movies make psychos smarter. If your kid is watching Child's Play, thinking what he does and says is okay, without teaching them the difference between fantasy and reality, you are at fault, parents. Not the movie or the form of media he consumed. You are to blame. So stop with this nonsense of the movies at fault. Tom Holland even chimed in and said it best. Viewers of horror films could only be influenced by their content if they were unbalanced to begin with. So there's your answer. Stop with this bullshit of, oh, it's the movies, it's the video games. Those people, they need a kick in the face or they need the voodoo doll from this movie to teach them a lesson. But yeah, that gets on my nerves. I know I stalled for a bit and all that, but what more can be said about Child's Play that hasn't already been said? It's a fucking classic. But I also think a point can be made about how these movies kind of played a part in getting me into horror. Because for a lot of kids, such as myself, this was like their first real horror film, myself included. As I remember in elementary school, I remember watching this as well as the sequel on TV, and it kind of implanted my love for the genre, wanting to see more of what the genre could offer and bring to the screen. Not everybody, though, at school was amused, my teachers especially, who got word that I was watching, and being the dumbasses they were, thinking that I was going to go on a spree or something, they called my mom and just were like, oh, why are you letting him watch these movies? They're very bad and all that. And even like this one incident, I found myself playing in the woods because some other kids did, an area we weren't supposed to be going into. Basically, this teacher took the idea that I said, like, oh, it's not like Jason's in the woods. Why aren't we allowed in there? They took it like I was looking for Jason's. And so they took one thing I said, spun it into something it wasn't, which is so stupid. But I think that whole incident is kind of where my parents got strict on letting me watch horror films and all that. Which to me is stupid because I wasn't acting like Chucky. I wasn't going up and murdering people. And it was that time, it just felt like everybody was trying to police what someone else was watching or what I watched. I know the difference between right or wrong because I have parents who explained it to me and pretty much showed me that this behavior is wrong. Do not reenact it. But yeah, I hadn't seen this film in such a long time. And watching it now, I can totally understand why I grew up loving this film and why it's a classic and why it's lived on for as long as it has as a classic. I mean, I do find myself rewatching this one and enjoying the sequel more, but I'll talk about that in the next video. And especially with number 3, which I'll talk about, which, little bit spoiler, I love number 2, and I'm going to talk about that. I think number 2 is my second favorite. But 3 is my favorite. I say that. 3 is my favorite. I love that one. I think it's unique. I just don't know what to think about Bride of Chucky based on what I've seen. This does not look like it has any of the feel of these films. But I'm going to get into talking about this film later, and we'll get into the other ones in the other videos. But getting into the cast in this film, the cast basically, you got Alex Vincent, and which this was like his film debut. He would go on to portray Andy in the sequel. You have Catherine Hicks, who was in Fever Pitch with Ryan O'Neal. She was also in Star Trek 4. In fact, she's actually married to Kevin Yeager, the effects guy in this, because they met on this movie. You also have Chris Sarandon, who was the main villain in Fright Night. He would go on to play Jack Skellington in The Nightmare Before Christmas. He would also play in that Tales from the Crypt movie, Bordello of Blood. Jack Colvin, who was Jack in The Incredible Hulk. Playing Chucky, though, is Brad Dourif, who he also plays the human version of Charles Lee Ray before he becomes Chucky. Brad Dourif, before this, he was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He would reprise his role as Chucky for 2 and 3. And, of course, he's going to be in Bride of Chucky. He was also in Fatal Beauty, which Tom Holland also directed. It's how he got the job for this. And thanks to Chucky, he would become a big name in the horror industry. He would be in Exorcist 3, Stephen King's Graveyard Shift, which is very underrated. Go check that film out if you guys haven't. Spontaneous Combustion. And he would have a quick role in the opening of Urban Legend, which I do plan to review. I'm writing that up right now. But the plot of Child's Play is, it's basically set in Chicago, where there is this serial killer named Charles Lee Ray, played by Brad Dourif, who is killing and slaying people in the way of ritual voodoo and black magic, earning him the name the Lakeshore Strangler. One night, one of the cops, Detective Mike Norris, played by Chris Sarandon, catches him where he manages to get a couple shots into him, which leads into this toy store. When his dying breath, because he's been using black magic, he's learned to transfer his soul into other stuff. And so, on his deathbed, he grabs this doll, known as a good guy doll, and transfers his soul into the doll, thus creating Chucky. Then we meet this little boy named Andy, played by Alex Vincent, who's living with a single mom, played by Catherine Hicks, who we find out it's his birthday, and he's a big fan of the good guy doll line. And his mom finds a version of the doll, which just so happens to be the one Charles possessed. And things get kicked into high gear when his babysitter ends up being killed by being pushed out the window, and Andy starts claiming Chucky did it. But of course, no one believes him, as Chucky basically plays fake around other people and only communicates with Andy. As now we find out Chucky's main objective is to basically get out of the doll, as because he's spending more time in the doll, he's becoming more human. So he has to transfer his soul into Andy, as he is the one who knew who he was originally. So now it's up to Andy's mother, Karen, to save her son and stop Chucky. Will Karen be able to save her son, or will Chucky succeed in getting his soul into him? Child's Play is a movie that has no right working as well as it does. This is a movie that proves with the right people behind the idea that on paper sounds so silly, like a doll killing people, that you could create something that works. Because first off, I'm glad they didn't go with Mancini's original idea of Chucky being a representation of Andy's anger towards particular things. I love the idea of it being a serial killer possessing the doll. I thought it was something that gave it some character, rather than having him snarling and growling like a rabid dog, but talked and had a personality in the way of Freddy Krueger. And watching it now, there's a lot of stuff I didn't realize this movie touched upon, because when you're a kid, you just see the doll killing people, and you're like, oh, that's what the movie's about, just the doll that kills people. Because if I was a kid filming this, I would have been like, the doll's killing people, it's great, it's about a doll who comes to life and kills people. Well, that's not the case. There's a lot of deeper meaning to the horror, as it touches upon the craze of the good guy doll and how everybody sees it as this cute thing, and you being a kid having this imagination, it's obvious that folks aren't going to believe you. So the idea of being this kid and being truthful about something like that, and your parents questioning you, I thought was an ingenious setup. And you, the viewer, questioning whether or not at the time it's the kid or the doll. And how it's done in this sort of Jaws sort of way, where you don't see the doll actually move and attack people till later on in the movie, I thought that it was ingenious. And it knows when to lighten the mood. The humor is definitely very funny, mostly coming from Chucky and the mouth that he has, a reason my mom hates these films. But it's done so at the right time in the right way. It isn't obnoxious or annoying to listen to. Even with Chucky's voice, his humor is very funny and psychotic and just really like, oh my god, I can't believe he said that. And rewatching this now, this one feels the most different of the Child's Play movies. Despite having some humor, this is probably the darkest. The film is very noir. It's very wintry, almost in a way where you look at it like Terminator to Terminator 2. That's what this reminds me of. It has that Terminator 1 feel to it. But I thought the story itself was ingenious. And I think a lot of people should go back and reevaluate the movie, as opposed to just seeing it as Chucky killing people. And it's only like 87 minutes. This film is only like an hour and 28 minutes, and it feels like a lot happens. Aside from that, I think the directing by Tom Holland is fantastic. For $13 million, this looks like it was made for $100 million. Despite everybody feeling like they were in hell making this because of how cold it was, he managed to get a lot out of the location that this movie was set in. The urban setting, I think, gave it some great atmosphere. His use of darkness and lighting in some of those areas really created a great sense of mood, like the scene of Karen walking through the street looking for the peddler, and you see the coal coming off her mouth, which you could tell is real cold and not fake or artificial. It really adds to the noir feel that the sequels are lacking, but I think that was intentional, and nothing against the sequels. I already touched upon that later, but the original just has this feel to it, especially with the noir setting that makes it its own, and just how run down the city of Chicago looks, and just the people on the streets like eating or sitting about. It really looks just this run down sort of feel to it, and you could totally see why Charles Lee Ray would be hiding out here, especially in the opening with the shootout, how he shot that and how grim it looked. But I also have to applaud his use of the camera, like the first person camera, like when you see Chucky running through the house like a rat, and you see like his only distinguishing feature is the color of the shirt right there, and you're led to believe that could be him or Andy, because at the time people seeing this didn't know it was the doll killing people because of how it was marketed. And he doesn't overuse those shots, especially when Chucky is revealed to be alive. That's when he shoots Chucky in a way where like you see him standing, or when you do see him walking, it's mostly from up here. I think he does a great job shooting the animatronics in those sections, as well as shooting when Chucky is talking or moving, or when Ed Gale was being Chucky in the costume. And I think it goes great with his directing, and it goes great with the feel that the movie was going for. But along with that, he has a great cast he brings along for the ride. I think Catherine Hicks does a great job as the mother. I thought she was likable. You could tell this is a mother trying to do her best to raise a good son and trying to give him the best birthday she can. And when this whole thing comes about, she wants to believe her son, but because of how absurd the idea is, she doesn't want to believe him. But then she starts believing him, and how she's willing to go to the center of the earth to help her son. I thought Catherine Hicks did that great. And working with the Chucky doll they created, especially with it attacking her, she got a lot out of it, and definitely the cast and crew got a lot out of her and her performance acting with that thing. So yeah, Catherine Hicks I thought did great. Alex Vincent I thought was great. I know kid actors could sometimes be questionable, but I thought Alex gave the character a lot of innocence. He didn't play him as a brat. He was a rather cute kid too. I thought he was really likable, especially when it's his birthday. You see him waking up and making his mom the breakfast with all the cereal and that huge butter on the toast and everything, and he ends up getting clothes. You see he's not whining, he doesn't act like a brat, and he's smart in a lot of moments. Like when he has to break out of the doctor's office, he does it himself, and the first place he goes is back home. So he's not a dumb kid waiting for his mother to do everything. And just those areas, I thought Alex did great. I do admit I like him more in the second one, because of the character arc that he has in this film goes ways above this one. But as a performance, I thought Alex did great. Chris Sarandon, I also thought did great as the typical cop who fails to believe in this whole thing till he gets attacked. But you can kind of see where he's coming from. I think him and Catherine have good chemistry together. I love the scene when he drops her off and he's mad that she won't leave the car, but she wants him to believe her. And he's trying to force her out, and he's like, I'm sane, Miss Barkley, sane and rational. But he's great. Everyone else does their parts great too. But of course, one cannot be overlooked, and that is Brad Dourif as Chucky. I can't see Chucky being played by anybody else but Brad. Just how insane he is as this character, and how he gives him this jokey and viciously psycho side to him, and just how every just sentence he has in this movie ends with him saying fuck or some other obscenity. Which even with Freddy, who dropped the word bitch every now and then, it was never to this length. Especially when he first comes alive, when she's about to throw the fire. I literally died. You stupid bitch, you filthy slut! Oh, I'll teach you to fuck with me! Brad Dourif is just phenomenal as this guy. And just how cruel of a villain he really is, that he'd be using to use a little boy to get what he wants and lying to him, like when he gets him to his old accomplice's house so he could kill him. You can't get this sort of a performance from anybody but Brad Dourif. But yeah, let's talk about what we want to talk about with this movie. The special effects. Well, let me start off by saying the animatronics on Chucky look spectacular. Kevin Yeager's design of Chucky looks great, especially when he's talking. I love this look that he gave him with this cuddly, but when he's in the doll form, not like this, because this is psychotic. When he's in the doll form, I like the side based a little bit off the My Buddy doll that I mentioned earlier, and just how cute he looked. But I love how as the movie goes along, you start to see him looking more like Brad Dourif when he was in the human form at the beginning, with his face looking less like the doll and more like Charles. Like you see like the eyebrows on him, like the hair falling out a bit. I like little details like that. I really do. And there's a lot of practical sort of stunt work, a lot of practical action, like the car chase. You could tell that's real cars, real fire going on. Just really adds a lot to the film. And the kills are great too. It's not overly bloody like, say, Friday the 13th Part 4, but there's some interesting kills. A doctor gets stabbed in the leg and shocked to death. A guy gets killed with a voodoo doll. Like I mentioned, I do think the sequels have done better with the kills. 2 and 3, I think, have the best kills of the series. But for the first one, they are well done. I also really love the score by Joe Ranzetti. Really contributes to the noir and child horror-like feel that they were going for, which was definitely in the end credit score that did. So yeah, definitely innocent while also being unsettling. I can't do it, but overall, what else needs to be said about Child's Play? It's earned its reputation as a classic for a good reason. If there was any problems I could say with the movie, the only one I truthfully has, and this is a nitpick, but I wish some of the scenes, not all, but a couple, had a bit more character development moments that they left in, because there was some stuff that were cut that I will get to. Because, for example, the movie touches upon how Andy's dad is dead, and Chucky tells him how he was sent down from heaven by Daddy to play with him. Well, the movie has a plot hole of how does he know about his dad? How does he know that he's dead? Well, if you think that's the fault of the movie, it's not. Apparently, they cut that out of the movie where there's a scene of Chucky and Andy looking through the room, and he says, like, "That's my dad, he's dead," and all that. I'm butchering it a bit, and making it sound worse than it actually is. But I really wish they kept that in there, as it could have given him and his mother some character development. Not to say there isn't any, but I wish they touched upon that aspect so it could show a side of Chucky that he was willing to use against Andy to basically get him on the vulnerable side, be that he's a little kid and he'll believe anything. Granted, he does, but I wish they pushed that a little bit more. I wish they kept areas like that in the movie. If there was anything that could have been kept in the editing stages, it should have been that. That's really a nitpick, though, and it doesn't deter my enjoyment. But bottom line, Child's Play may be now 1 in a million killer doll films, but this, along with 2 and 3, are the finest in the pack. The first one does the killer doll angle so well, it creates a suspenseful, funny, and special effects-driven venture. So if you haven't seen Child's Play, do yourself a favor and go check it out. Go see it if you're a horror fan. You'll get a lot of bang for your buck. So when it comes down to it, I give Child's Play a 9.5 out of 10, and it deserves it. It therefore gets the Alexandra seal of approval. Definitely a classic that every horror fan must check out. But that's my review for Child's Play, and next time, of course, I'm going to review the sequel, Child's Play 2, so you'll be seeing my thoughts on that. But that's what's coming next. I also have a review of Child's Play 3 coming. I'm also going to be doing a review of Urban Legend as well as Strangeland. I have those reviews being worked on. I'm about to go watch Strangeland after this, so be on the lookout for that. But for right now, I will see you guys later. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of Child's Play. Are you guys a fan of it? Did you guys enjoy it? I would love to know you guys' thoughts. But for right now, rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next part. See you guys.